What's happening, Dawson Wheeler? How's it going, buddy?
Doing great. Just got back from my bike ride on the Natchez Trace and yeah, digging into life around the house again.
How long is that bike ride you did this morning?
No, it was this weekend. We did
Oh,
two back-to-back 100-mile days riding from basically Tupelo, Mississippi down to Natchez, Mississippi. So riding in the deep south on the parkway called the Natchez Trace. It was great. Had a good
what,
time.
was it a little warmer than normal? Man, it's getting hot now, man.
No, same temperatures, Chattanooga's highs 91, 92.
That's hot.
Uh, yeah, it was very hot. So start early, try to finish early. So
Yep, beer
I'm
early.
pleased. I'm
All
happy.
right, let's do this. It's our weekly check-in, man. I'm glad you're doing good, and everybody, do us a favor: go follow Dayfire on Instagram or DWheeler59 on Instagram, and of course, you're here on our Facebook page. So feel free to share it with your friends. But Dawson, let's do what we're doing on Tuesdays. It seems to be our default day for right now. We're about to have a conversation with our folks from Rock Creek Outfitters.
Yeah,
Who do we got
great.
with us?
We got Josh Legg coming back, and I think he's coming up on the screen. And I think today we're talking about ground pads.
What's up,
So,
Josh?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
We're
hey, we're
good.
doing great, man. How you
Uh,
doing?
Hanging in there, man. Doing the deal, making it happen.
Okay,
Yeah.
real quick, before Dawson and you talk the ins and outs of ground pads, which is the number one headline in the nation today is ground pads. I just
I
want to
think yeah,
say,
there's something to be said for taking a nap for
oh,
sure.
please, yes. I just want to say this to you, though, Josh. Your setup today, now that you've got some help, you, sir, now are the media professional making us look bad. So you're doing good.
Hey, we've set the bar as low as possible last week with my broken phone, so anywhere from there is up.
All right, Dawson and Josh, y'all talk ground pads.
Hey, Josh. So, we try to pick a product or two every week and talk about what's going on at Rock Creek. And so I'm intrigued with you to start out with why today we're talking about ground pads. Why ground pads?
You know, I think right now it's really a question a lot of people have. They come in and you can do research online all day, and really it's another one of these categories. And tents and sleeping bags are kind of the same way, but you really have to test them out. And what we're seeing is people looking for opportunities to go outside. I mean, we've got doom and gloom everywhere we look, and there's just something to be said for getting outside and getting some sunshine and experiencing nature. And a good night's sleep goes a long way. So that's really kind of what framed it up. And honestly, at this point, I'd be shocked if any other outdoor retailer within any distance of us, at least in the southeast, would have as many ground pad selections as we do. So we're definitely fully locked and loaded, and we've got a lot to choose from here to get out there and have a comfortable night's sleep.
I think it's really funny that we're talking about ground pads because there was a guy that we all know, and he was Ryan last week tried to do the double scar in the Smoky Mountains, fastest known time, and he encountered some really bad weather and pulled off with a single scar. But he was in my house yesterday and he was retuning some gear, and the thing he was retuning was on his first fastest known trip last week, he slept in a hammock, and because he was going ultralight, he didn't take a canopy, uh, and it didn't work out. He didn't sleep well. He didn't have a ground pad. He got very cold from the underneath because of the lack of pad and lack of sleeping bag. And so I had to dig up three different kinds of ground pads, which I was amazed actually with the ground pad selection I have in my house. And so we had all three of my ground pads out. I've got a one kind of wide, it's kind of like the three little pigs or whatever. I had one that was wide and insulated, one not as wide, and then the wide mouth that you can blow up quickly. So this is a great time to talk about it because we geeked out for about 30 minutes in my house while he picked the perfect pad of the three of the ones and took off for to do this attempt on the double scar again. So where do you want to start, Josh?
I mean, that's kind of a good segue. With hammock camping being as prevalent as it is, I run into that a lot. I mean, we talk to so many people who say, "Man, my sleeping bag, I just froze in it," And that's one of the basic concepts of having some sort of insulation underneath you. If you're in a hammock and you're in your sleeping bag and you're laying on the hammock and you don't have any kind of rigid insulation underneath you, you're going to lose all that heat out of the bottom. And so those are the basic principles of kind of the ground pad conversation. They measure R value for ground pads, and that's the same way that you would measure insulation for your house. If anybody's done any investigation into building materials, or had any experience with that. But yeah, R value, the higher the number, the warmer the pad is. And even if you're sleeping in a hammock, you oftentimes need to have a pad underneath you, even in the summer, because you'll find yourself really cold. And a lot of the troubleshooting that we do has to do with R value. People saying my sleeping bag's rated to this temperature, it doesn't keep me warm. And then we start doing a little digging on what kind of pad they're using. Sometimes they're not using a pad at all. All that heat gets sucked out of the bottom of the sleeping bag and you sleep cold. Pretty much negates the whole temperature of the bag. So, um,
You
we
could
can start. Go ahead.
you could also have a ground pad that's a real high loft, air mattress kind of thing, but it doesn't have a good R value. So you lay down to start your evening on a 3-inch puffy pad and you wake up in the middle of the night and you're freezing and you can't figure it out, right?
Correct. Yeah, and I've been in the opposite end of that spectrum as well, trying to sleep in the desert in Utah with an over insulated pad and just trying to find any amount of reprieve to get off of that thing to get some cool air flowing. So I mean, it's definitely something that you have to gauge, where you're going to be using it mostly. Do you need more than one pad with more than one insulation type? That type of thing. But we usually say if you want one pad, get something that's insulated, like with a around a 3 R value, and you'll find that it's kind of a middle of the road. And we've got so many pads we can talk about here, but the Sea to Summit here, it's got an R value of 3.3, and that's usually kind of my gauge of like a middle of the road sort of thing that I'm going to be in some summer, probably not peak summer heat, but I'm also going into the winter, but probably not dead middle of winter
Okay.
specific pad.
Well, I was just going to say something before you pull that thing out. One of the ways to avoid this from a guy who doesn't use, the ground pads is just to get a van like Dawson. Now, you guys continue on, please. That's a great way just to avoid this.
Right.
You
Let's
can, but
go
you
full
can't. You
luxury.
can't drive the van down the Appalachian Trail. So
I was just,
that becomes problematic. So
you
where are
Yeah.
get
we
in trouble.
starting, Josh?
Well, let's just start it at the basics. If you just want to get something to get the job done, get outside, no frills. Nemo's doing this cool closed cell foam pad, and these things are pretty neat. They've actually got a technology in here that's got these bumps. I'm sure they've got a fancy term for it, but it's a surprisingly comfortable pad, and it folds up. And one of the most fundamental benefits of a pad like this is that you can't get a hole in it. So
Yeah.
if you got a kid who's gonna go just throw it down, lay it in the dirt, think about the scout troops and stuff like that. We've got um, you can get in the door for $50 on a pad like this. The R value, or it Nemo does theirs a little different. This will go down to 20 degrees and keep you comfortable. Um, and there's something to be said for just having a mat to lay down and use in a variety of applications. This is something you can just lay out, sort of halfway and just sit on the ground, and it's pretty comfortable, and you don't have to worry about it popping or anything like that.
The
And
the one thing I would add to that too is I camp sometimes with my dog Eddie,
mhm.
and the first trip I went, I had a air mattress with me, and Eddie jumped in my tent, and his claws popped my air mattress. So, for people that are going out with their dog, and if they're going to let their dog come into the tent at night, that is a great ground pad. That's a great choice to have when you're out with your dog.
Yeah, last thing you want to do is have this $200, super high end space age technology pad, and then have the dog come in there and just put holes in it. And I've been on trips, where you get a hole in your pad, and the whole time you're trying to troubleshoot where the hole is, and it's just not fun. So, I mean, there's something to be said for having a closed cell phone pad that can just get the job done, and you don't have to worry about it. So,
Great.
yeah. Um, One of the next pads that I'd like to show is basically it's a Sea to Summit pad, and this comes in a variety of different styles and insulations and thicknesses. But I think they're doing some really cool stuff right now. And one of the main reasons that I bring this up, and I don't want to pick on anybody, but the way that things have traditionally been done is more of a valve that when you open it up, there's foam on the inside, and this was kind of, Thermarest pioneered this technology a long time ago. I mean, late '70s, right, Dawson?
Yeah.
The self-inflating pad, they put foam in it. The foam is the insulation, and then when you open the pad, the foam expands and pulls the air in, and they call that a self-inflating pad. And so that's a really cool concept. The foam definitely adds an element of bulk into the equation, so it doesn't pack down quite as small. But it's a nice, comfortable pad. They make them in an inch up to 2 inches. Um, but one of the things that happens is as you're inflating this pad, in between breaths, it's trying to deflate on you. So you have to seal it off to keep it from deflating. So what we're seeing now is a lot of people are doing this one-way valve, and so these guys have sort of an air blockers that as you inflate it, it doesn't try and deflate on you, and then it's got a quick release, so it just lets all the air out of the pad, which is really convenient for when you're packing up in the morning. You're not having to push the air out as you're trying to compress the foam down in a self-inflating style pad. So these roll up really easily, and they've got a cool inflation technique that actually has a stuff sack, like a 30-liter stuff sack that you connect to the valve, and you can just blow air into it and then push the air into the actual pad. And it only takes about 3 tries to inflate the pad. So I'm a huge fan of these. They've also got what's called they call it a sprung cell technology. And it essentially means that everywhere that you indent one of the cells, it doesn't manipulate the surface of the rest of the pad. So if you're laying on one spot and you roll over to the side, one direction or the other, it's going to cradle you as you're laying there. So I find these pads to be really comfortable, even for something that's like an inch and a half to 2 inches thick. It feels as comfortable as some of the 3 inch thick pads that you would find from some other manufacturers. And then one of the benefits to this material also is it's not overly crinkly when you roll around on it, but it's also easy to patch. So it just comes with a patch that you can stick on there if you find the hole. One of the tricks is to either submerge it in water or put some soapy water around it and look for the bubbles to come up. And then once you've identified the spot, you can just put the patch on it, and it's easy to patch. You don't have to mess around with glues or anything like that.
Back in the day, people were always worried about the seams, and you get the seam open up or something like that. And when the Sea to Summit pads came out, and all these new pads, they appear to have a lot of seams, but my understanding is they're made in factories, these really high tech factories, and you guys rarely see any kind of problem in the seam area of any of these pads, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that we'll have to have Brandon Weiss on sometime, and he can talk in depth on the pads if we get around to that. But um, sonic welding is the way that they put these seams together, and it's supposed to have a failure rate of like less than 1% or something like that. And the other thing that helps with the seams not failing is when you inflate the pad with the pump sack versus breath directly from your lungs. It has less moisture content, and moisture on the inside of the pad will actually eat away at the seams and cause more failure than if you're using just neutral, non-moisture content air. So that's one of the big reasons that doing the pump sack, removing your air from a direct transmission into the pad is beneficial. Or you'll see, some of the Nemo pads have like the foot pumps and things like that, and that's one of the benefits of going with a pad like that. But Brandon told me that if they do testing, batch testing, and if they find one failure in a batch, they destroy the batch. So they have a very low return rate on the seams failing.
Well, I think right now, the COVID-19 thing has us really focused around how we deal with our hands and mouths and everything, and not having to put our mouth on a valve stem right now is got to be another positive, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're getting into if you're
Sharing.
renting or borrowing a pad or sharing, yeah, there's something to be said for that. I mean, I've thought about that for years. Every time I'm blowing up one of our rental pads or something like that, I'm like, I should probably disinfect that.
So the price on that pad was how much?
So they range in price. The yellow one I was just showing you is around $100. The insulated is 129, and that's important to note that yellow being non-insulated, that's a great summertime pad, and then the orange is a good kind of all-season pad. And then if you go up in insulation value, you start getting into the 159 kind of territory.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right.
Whatever you've got in front of you right now, it looks like something you're more in my territory. That looks a little more luxurious, like maybe I could, hang out and take a nap on that one.
Yeah, I mean, this thing definitely is getting up in size a little bit. It's one of the thicker pads. It's 3 inches thick, and this is where I start getting into my side sleepers. There are different types of people, different types of sleepers, and some people toss and turn all night, kind of like I do. There are some dedicated side sleepers, and you got back and front sleepers. But this type of pad is nice for a side sleeper where you can let a little bit of that air out and kind of find your way into a more comfortable kind of cradling position. And Nemo does some really cool stuff. This style has been pioneered for a while, but they're integrating some internal welding on this, and they're also doing the valve kind of trick as well, where it's not going to deflate on you as you're trying to blow it up, and you get the quick deflation that just lets all the air out, which is really nice. And it's definitely one of those things that I'll lay this one down and lay the Sea to Summit down and let somebody test both of them and just see which one is more comfortable for them.
I think it's a really good point you just said, because I mean, you got to think about width, but you also have to think about the way, you sleep at night. That's part of the selection process, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. And, then you start getting into this weight and packability conversation as well. As we sort of alluded to earlier, you've got biggest, bulkiest, cheapest. It's like the outdoor industry is always this way. The less there is of something, the more it costs typically, and which seems kind of counterintuitive. But you've got on one end of the spectrum the high price $210 Neo Air Uber Light. That's the lightest thing on the market right now, or one of the lightest things on the market for the thickness. And then you've got just the regular Neo Air, which is lighter than the Nemo, but the price goes up. And then you've got this thing that kind of happens where maybe one pad sounds a little different than the other one, and but if all you're going for is weight, you may make an exception to go for the lightest, most packable thing, even though you may have something that maybe doesn't sound quite like you would hope for on the front end, but you're looking to get your pack weight down.
Great.
It's too, we've had several of these conversations about bikes or shoes. And for those people who are going from I'm a hiker, I just want to go on a 2 or 3 hour hike. Now they're starting to transition. I'm going to try doing this more serious. The reason I love these things is because you guys are talking about and asking questions or bringing up topics that most people, if they didn't slow down and come and ask somebody like you, Josh, or your team, they would just come in, look at this stuff, pick out a pad, don't take into consideration how they sleep, the temperature, where you're going, the noise. They don't take into consideration all that. So I think it's good because there's a lot of people that may be wanting to up their outdoor game, and without these kind of questions, they're going to buy and spend money they should not be doing.
Yeah, you do run into that, and that's one of the benefits of being able to come in, touch and feel, and talk to somebody who's kind of been down the road. Because if we're doing our job right, we're asking questions that you haven't necessarily thought of, but find to be a good question. So, we'll start asking a few of these qualifying questions, and that'll start getting that thought process rolling on like when am I going most frequently, or what is kind of my basic kit that I've got, or what direction am I headed, and then we can be very practical. Not everybody's going to be a $200 pad customer. There's a lot of great $50 to $100 pads that can definitely get the job done, that are totally capable. It's just a matter of determining what's going to be the best fit for you, and then trying them out and determining what you think is the most comfortable because, footwear and sleeping arrangement tend to be two of the biggest things that can make or break your experience outside. So you definitely want to think through those a lot.
Well, it's funny. I mean, when we talk about this, and I don't think people make not everybody makes this connection, but when you're thinking mattresses at home, and then you hear the statistics of how much time we spend in bed, which is what, 60, 50, 55, 60% of your life you're spent in bed. And that's why you want to buy, a really great mattress for your house. And, it may be a king, it may be a queen, it may be a pillow top, but why you go into a mattress store, you spend a lot of time laying on mattresses. And then inevitably, I mean, you're really trying to buy the very best mattress for your home. That same logic applies, and it almost ought to apply more because when you're going out, this is a part of your recreation and your relaxation. If you don't get a good night's sleep, you know, going out to a beautiful spot and waking up the next morning where you tossed and turned all night and got an hour and a half of restless sleep, kind of, I mean, that kind of negates the whole reason you went out there to begin with.
We've all experienced it, and you could argue that that's part of the overarching experience is determining what the uncomfortable things are, so that you can really appreciate the comfortable things. But yeah, we've all been there, and there's nothing better than crawling into your tent at night and looking forward to the experience that's coming your way versus like, oh no, here we go, it's nighttime again.
Well, it's not the most glamorous thing to pick in your store. I mean, there's some really cool knives and there's really cool headlamps and there's beautiful clothes and there's all these colors and everything. But if you don't start with the basics like good footwear and a good sleeping pad, the rest of it, it starts falling off the edges real quick. So what else? What else? What else can you tell us, or what else do you have?
I guess really there's two other pads I can kind of drop down here real quick, and since we're going in the thicker category here, Clint, you'll like these.
Well, I'll just tell you, so far, I would have bought the wrong footwear, the wrong bike, and the wrong sleeping pad. I would have been miserable getting there, miserable sleeping, and miserable walking the hike the next day. So thank you.
Well, and Clint, I think you're on to something that's a really great point, is the value of going to a specialty retailer like Rock Creek Outfitters that's got trained staff that use the products every day. They're out there experiencing them, coming back and giving feedback, and allowing yourself to come in with, a certain amount of time where you can have these conversations makes those when you buy products, you're walking out the door knowing you bought the right product. And that's why going to a specialty retailer like Rock Creek is so important, because I mean, Josh is one of 100 staff people, and everybody's trained up and are users, but you can have these conversations at Rock Creek. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, we're doing it internally. The whole reason we're here is we were geeking out on this stuff on our own time, and then what a better way to come in and be surrounded at work with other people who geek out on it, and you get to look at it all day and play with it. So we just got some hours in investigation, and that whole process of like, you can get it right first try, but sometimes you're gonna try something and it maybe didn't go quite as planned. But anytime you make a commitment to try something and use it, you're always going to learn from that experience, for better or worse, and you just got to use that to kind of fuel your next decision. But that's sort of where we're at. We've kind of been through that process a couple of times and can help eliminate some of the stumbling blocks that you might encounter.
What's the Mac Daddy? What's the Mac Daddy match? What do you got in front of you, dude?
Well, so this is kind of getting some notoriety right now. It's the Ether Light. It's another Sea to Summit pad. We've got a bunch of these in stock right now, but this is a good summertime pad. This is something I would want to take this time of year. And honestly, you can tell from the way it packs down. I mean, it's very, for the fact that it's 4 inches thick compared to 2 inches thick. It's twice the thickness, and it doesn't pack up any bigger than the insulated little brother there.
There you go.
Yeah,
I'm all
this
in.
thing is
Yeah.
sweet for sure.
That looks
And
like a beach sleeping nap pad, to be honest with you.
hey, you can take this to the swimming pool and float around in it, so you get as much use out of it as you want. And I'll show you the stuff sack on this thing because it's worth pointing out. This is one of the things I like most about these guys. So that's the pad rolled up right there. Easy to roll up. You're not fighting all the foam to get it all packed down. And then this is the stuff sack. So you basically have your stuff sack, and then the pump sack rolls out of it. And then from that point, I'll just do a quick demo on the inflation technique. This has just a nozzle that you attach right here to the valve, and then you just grab one side of it and blow into it, and then that's how you inflate it. So
Wow.
That's
considering
super cool, right?
it's really cool, and it's not trying to deflate on you. And from the factory steamrolled position, I mean, it only takes 4 or 5 breaths to actually blow it back up. So
Oh,
that
that's
sure
cool.
does beat,
That's
going back to the whole I'm winded from hiking all day, and now I've got to blow my pad up. And then the flip side of that is, when you're packing up camp the next morning, you hear this hissing sound coming from all the tents, and it's everybody pressing their foam pads out. This doesn't have it. You just open the valve and it's empty. So it takes a lot of the work off of it. And they've got this pillow lock system, which is really cool. They've got a really cool sleeping or a pillow system that integrates with the pad, and you can put these little Velcro strips onto the pad. It even lays out how to do it, and it attaches to the pad so the pillow's not trying to run away from you in the middle of the night. So that's a cool feature as well.
how much is that pad?
Yeah. I
Uh,
may want that for the house.
I think
These things,
that needs to be added to the Wheeler quiver right there.
it really, and you think about it from like the packability point of view, you can put this in your closet and not even sweat it. And if you got somebody coming over to spend the night or something like that, if you pump and it's blown up, you don't have to plug in the inflator and get the batteries going to get the big queen pillow top going. I mean, this is totally capable of handling kind of whatever you want to throw at it. But yeah, these are 160, 159.
And that would be a great pad too, to ride my van. So, you end up like Josh, you and I got, I mean,
Yeah.
because honestly, in my van, Josh and I are not going to get up in my bed together, and, he's going to have to lay down on the floor of my van, and that would be ideal just to
Yeah.
pump it up real quick right at bedtime, lay down and have a great night's sleep. Yeah, that'd be a great accessory to go into a van
It's a
or
cool option, and
any RV, right? I mean, that'd be a great thing to have.
yeah, and it's so to kind of bump to the end of the line, and this option here from Sea to
Whoa.
Summit, it's got like a pillow top kind of feature to it, and if you're looking for comfort, um, this guy definitely does a good job of being comfortable. It's got the same valve technology, but it's not going to pack up nearly as small because, again, you start adding foam to the equation or these materials that aren't as lightweight or puncture prone, a little bit more durable. You get a bigger pad. You're looking at over $200 for this, but this is kind of like a portable mattress. This would be something that is on the super high end of comfort. It doesn't make a whole lot of sound when you roll around on it, and it's been my experience that when people lay on this, it's pretty much like unequivocally, I'll take that. I've had some people be like, I don't care about the weight, I'm going to figure it out. So
Well, and if you're doing a pack trip, a raft trip
yeah,
where you're not carrying it and you're going down the Green River for 4 days, that would be a great pad to throw in the raft and at night because the raft's doing the carrying. It'd be a great front country where you're car camping or truck camping
mm-hmm.
or any kind of RV. But if you're putting up a 4-person tent, in the Smokies or the Rocky Mountain National Park in one of the front country campsites, man, that would be awesome to sleep on.
Yeah, and you want to take into account, that you're going to have a little higher R value on something like this. So for summer, you want to just be aware what your R value is. It's a 6.5. So you really, unless somebody's a really cold sleeper, there are people who just sleep really cold. That could be an option. And then if not, it's a great, fall, exactly like you're talking about, front country camping mat. And it's probably going to require the least amount of adjustment to get used to. If you're used to sleeping on your mattress at home, this is going to feel a whole lot like that, if not slightly better. So.
Man, thanks for going through pads with us today.
Yeah, totally happy to do so.
How's everything going at Rock Creek?
It's good. It's good. I was just over at the bike shop yesterday and putting out a little new inventory and kind of doing a little rearranging and consolidating. And we've still got the warehouse sale going on over there, and so I'm amazed at how many people we're seeing come through. I had a guy come through yesterday, and he was freaking out. He had this whole armload of stuff, and he was just grinning from ear to ear. He was like, I had no idea you had this much stuff over here." So, I think he was hitting up the 50 off racks and maybe some of those 70% off racks. So on all the past season merchandise that we have over there. But it's good to see the foot traffic picking back up, and we're definitely running wide open right now. Got a lean team, but we're making the most of it.
Hey, we really appreciate you taking some time out of your day and giving us a little education on ground pads. That's awesome. Clint,
Yeah.
I know you probably found something in there, right?
Yeah, I did. I found a bunch of stuff, but we'll work out something between me and Josh and Rock Creek, and we'll figure it out. I like that other one, the other big one you had up there, the gray one. I like that one.
I'll take care of you, Clint. You come in and see me. I'll hook you up.
I will. And do me a favor, if you're watching this video, check out rockcreekoutfitters.com. They've got different programs going on. They have all kinds of services. It's a great Father's Day, to go buy some stuff for Father's Day. Go check out dayfirepodcast.com. We've got 2 new releases out the last couple of weeks. Got some new ones coming out this week. So we're kind of back in the saddle. Share it with your friends. And again, Dawson, it's good seeing you. Josh, thank you as always. Talk to you later. Bye, everybody. Is everybody okay with leaving? Are we done?
Yeah, I think we're good. Hey, the one
Go ahead, Dawson.
Our last podcast was with Andy Anderson, who is an original Rock Creek Outfitters employee. He started in high school at Rock Creek and later went on to be a ranger for over 14 years, but has the fastest known time on the Grand Teton and Long's Peak. So, that just speaks to the caliber of people coming through Rock Creek. Great podcast, by the way, if you get a chance, take a listen. Anyway, y'all have a great day. Talk to you soon.
See you, everybody. Y'all have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye.